Thanks, Sophie. You're watching South East Today. Our top story tonight. Police warn students of the dangers of spiking as one young victim speaks out about her experience.
I was terrified. You know, it's a whole 5-hour chunk of my life that I'm never going to get back. I'm constantly questioning what happened to me.
We're live with more at Sussex Police HQ in Lewes. The Prime Minister says he won't put a timeline on stopping small boat arrivals.
I'm not going to pick an arbitrary date because I think they're pretty fed up with governments setting arbitrary dates, but I'm absolutely determined that we will tackle this.
Eastbourne councillors approve a swathe of cuts to help pay for the rising costs of homelessness.
Their hostess came round, so would you like a drink? I said, yes, please. Give me a bunch of grapes and do it yourself, kid.
And 60 years in showbiz and still on tour, we chat to Jimmy Tarbuck about his star-studded career. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Ellie Crisell. As tens of thousands of students start university this week, the police are warning them to be aware of the dangers of spiking, where people are given drink or drugs without their consent. Victims, usually women and girls, can experience sickness, disorientation and memory loss in a crime that's often the prelude to serious offences. One young victim has told us the experience left her terrified. Charlie Rose has the details.
Seen through the eyes of the victim, this film portrays what can happen when someone is given drink or drugs without their consent. This EastEnders mini-series was made to raise awareness of spiking. But Imogen's story is no fiction. The Brighton University graduate was targeted at a pub.
I was terrified. You know, it's a whole 5-hour chunk of my life that I'm never going to get back. I'm constantly questioning what happened to me, who was I with, where was I don't know, I don't have answers. And I didn't actually know if anything had happened to me.
The National Police Chiefs Council said there were more than 6,700 reported incidents of spiking in the year to April 2023. Women and girls make up 75% of all spiking victims, with 70% of reported offences taking place at the weekend.
What are you doing to make people feel safe, students, young people and others who are going out on a Friday or Saturday night?
So that is the entire thrust really of these intensification weeks. It's about that raising awareness, having those engagement opportunities. So we've got lots of community engagement events going on throughout the week, and in the nighttime economy out on the Friday, Saturday nights you will see an increase in policing presence, lots of officers to talk to, engage with.
And Brighton students are aware of the dangers.
It's always on the back of your mind whenever you go out. It's quite scary.
I think as females, we're more conscious of having drinks when we're out and leaving our drinks alone, that we're on a higher vigilance of checking our drinks at all times.
Lots of my friends have been, usually when they're out in nightclubs or just pubs and stuff around Brighton.
I work at Y Bar and it happens quite a lot, to the point where there's rules having to be made where if there's a drink left alone, you need to take it away.
And the guidance for those on a night out is to stay with trusted friends and to be vigilant.
Not accepting drinks from strangers, for example, in pubs and clubs, or if you do want to accept a drink, you go up to the bar and only take the drink from the server.
It's looking out for your mates, looking out for everybody around you, get to know the physical body language signs of being spiked.
Important advice to help other young students arriving in our cities for the new academic year.
Well, Charlie is live in Lewes for us this evening. Charlie, the government's planning legislation to make spiking a specific criminal offence. It's hard to believe that it isn't already, isn't it?
Yes, Ellie, spiking is already a crime covered by other legislation, but what the government wants to do is to help police better respond to incidents. Now, I asked the Home Office how long it would be before this new legislation announced in the King's Speech would arrive. They said there's no timescale, only that it was being worked on. I've also been on the phone to the National Police Chiefs Council today, asking them how many reports of spiking have resulted in a prosecution, and I'm still waiting to hear back. Now, Sussex police say the vast majority of people who head out for an evening in somewhere like Brighton do so without any issues whatsoever and enjoy their time. And the number of people who report spiking, they say, is comparatively very small. But let's hope that these tens of thousands of students coming back to our cities or to our cities for the first time for the new academic year heed the warnings and the advice, Ellie.
Charlie, thank you. A woman's been taken to hospital following an explosion in a Kent village. 5 fire engines were sent to Charing near Ashford this morning after the blast destroyed a bungalow. It's led to road closures and significant delays for motorists. The Prime Minister has told this programme he is not going to put an arbitrary date on stopping small boats bringing migrants into the southeast. Sir Keir Starmer says he's absolutely determined to tackle the crossings but would not commit to a time frame. Speaking ahead of the Labour Party conference, Sir Keir also said he would set out plans to rebuild the country. Our political editor Charlotte Wright began by asking whether he was comfortable building houses on the Greenbelt.
I'm determined that we're going to build the houses that we need because too many people have had the dream of home ownership shattered under the last government. So that means we need to build houses, and that's why we put in place a new framework for building those houses. That is brownfield first. So that means that brownfield sites first. So just to reassure everybody, that is the absolute policy. But we also need to make sensible use of the Greenbelt in some places.
Your planning consultation document says that if there is not enough grey belt land, as you call it, councils should move on to higher performing Greenbelt sites. Does that mean green fields are up for grabs in places like Kent and Surrey?
Well, brownfield is first, so that means that we will build on brownfield. Beyond that, sensible use, but to give you some example of the southeast, you know, we've had examples in the past of houses being built on old playing fields which were outside of the Greenbelt rather than, you know, disused car parks that were in the Greenbelt. I don't think anybody thinks that that's sensible, but I do want to reassure you it's brownfield first.
So no green fields would get built on? Can you promise that?
Sensible use, but, you know, in my view, not building on a disused car park because it's within the Greenbelt, but building on a playing field because it's not, is not something I think most people would say is particularly sensible.
Would you like to see more towns like Crawley built in the southeast?
We do need to see new towns.
In the southeast?
Well, we've not yet said where the new towns are going to be, so I'm not going to get ahead of myself. But we do need new towns. They're vibrant, they really help the local economy and build new communities. So we are committed to that. Obviously, we'll go through a process of determining where they're going to be.
Okay, there have been more than 10,000 arrivals on the Kent coast since you came to power. Is it possible to stop the small boats entirely?
I'm absolutely determined that we will take down the gangs that are running this vile trade.
Can you stop the small boat arrivals?
I think the way to deal with small boats is to deal with those that are running the vile trade, and that's why we've set up the Border Security Command. We announced the commander earlier this week. That's why we've already fast-track some of the processing.
I'm not
so
asking
we are
about
taking
these
effective
policies.
decisions.
What I'm asking is whether it's possible to stop the small boats, because the previous government pledged to do that, and I noticed that you haven't said that.
Well, the previous government did pledge to do that and then completely failed. And we're on record numbers.
Possible?
I think the way to tackle it, because we do need to tackle it, absolutely, it matters hugely across the whole country, but particularly to people in the southeast. So we do need to tackle it. I think the way to tackle it is to take down the gangs that are running the vile trade. That's why I've already had meetings with the President of France, meetings in Germany where some of the boats are transiting through, and if people shouldn't be here, they return to where they came from.
And when can people living in Kent along the coast expect to stop seeing small boats arrive on the coast?
Well, we've been on it from day one. That's why I've set up the Border Security Command.
But when will they see results?
Well, as quickly as possible. I'm not going to pick an arbitrary date because I think they're pretty fed up with governments setting arbitrary dates, but I'm absolutely determined that we will tackle this.
Prime Minister, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the Prime Minister was speaking to Charlotte, who's now live for us in Westminster this evening. Charlotte, you do only get a really limited amount of time, don't you, at these pre-conference interviews, but you got Sir Keir to talk about some pertinent topics for our South East viewers.
Yes, certainly. We were ushered through that famous black door into the Downing Street garden, and there is literally somebody with a stopwatch there telling you to wrap it up when you've had your allotted time. So I did my best to fit in what I could. On that issue of small boats, you often hear Sir Keir Starmer talking about smashing the gangs, but you don't hear him say stop the boats like the previous government did. And I suspect that might be maybe because he doesn't necessarily want to commit to something that he might not be able to achieve. So I did try to push him on that, but you heard he didn't really answer that question. And then there's the issue of housing, meeting the housing need in the southeast. Labour think it is right to build on the green belt to unlock that housing across the southeast. Of course, the green belt is that area of land that stops towns, cities like London expanding into places like Kent and Surrey. But of course, that is controversial because there are plenty of people in the southeast who are very worried about the more house building bringing pressure on infrastructure and on our green spaces as well. So these are some really big issues that the government has got to deal with over the next 5 years.
Indeed. Charlotte, thank you. That controversy over building new homes is fierce in Kent, where campaigners opposed to a new development of 1,800 houses say it threatens ancient woodland. Environmentalists say plans for the site between Canterbury and Faversham will also damage a site of special scientific interest. But the developers say they're providing desperately needed new homes and facilities. Our environment correspondent Yvette Austin explains.
A rare fungus, crown-tipped candelabra coral, filmed by experts just last week on the edge of a site earmarked by developers for housing. There have only been a handful of sightings in the past 10 years, and it's just one example why conservationists say the planned 1,800 home development mustn't go ahead.
They seem to have quite specific needs, so rotting wood and established woodlands and that sort of thing. And so when you find a site that's got this mushroom appearing in it, it shows straight away that it's important and it needs looking after.
Developers Shapter say the plan on farmland for homes, shops, restaurants, a school and open space will be an inclusive new community which will set new standards for how to live sustainably. But campaigners say it threatens surrounding ancient woodland, a site of special scientific interest and a special area of conservation.
Our local biodiversity group has done some surveys and we've found 400 to 500 different species of plants and animals.
It is argued that we need new houses. We need new houses for sort of local people. Young people want to stay in the village. What would you say to that?
Bolton and Dunkirk already has a neighbourhood plan. So in that neighbourhood plan they did a call for sites a couple of years ago, and this site was not deemed suitable for housing. It's too large. It would swamp the villages of Bolton and Dunkirk as they exist at the moment. This is not about local need. This is about developers just seeing that they can make a lot of money from land that's actually productive farmland at the moment.
The developers say the land is poor quality, has been unsuitable for food production for the past 7 years and has limited potential for agricultural use without a considerable increase in additional nutrients. Therefore, it presents an ideal opportunity for much needed housing development. There would also be a buffer zone between the development and the wood, but conservationists believe the plan is completely inappropriate, and it comes at a time when they say much of our woodlands are under pressure. The planning application will be considered by Swale Borough councillors. Yvette Austin, BBC South East Today, Dunkirk.
Medway Council has admitted its guidance could have been clearer following complaints from parents over the 11+ exam their children sat this week. Pupils had expected 50 minutes for the English language part of the Medway test, which assesses them for a grammar school place, but only 30 minutes was allocated. Results will be sent out on October the 16th. A brown bear is set to undergo brain surgery in Kent in what's thought to be the first operation of its kind in the UK. The Wildwood Trust near Canterbury says 2-year-old Boki needs the life-saving operation due to seizures caused by fluid on the brain. A specialist vet who's performed a similar operation on a bear in Asia will carry out the pioneering surgery. A programme of cuts has been approved by councillors in Eastbourne as they struggle to balance the books due to the rising cost of homelessness. The government says it's working on a long-term strategy to tackle the issue, with a record number of people now living in temporary accommodation. Michael Buchanan has been speaking to one of the families affected.
This is our only social area, aside from the bedrooms, but we can't get 5 people in one room or the other, really. So social interaction is a challenge.
Kelly Mirza-Clay, her husband and 3 children have been living in this property in Eastbourne since July.
My husband sleeps here. My 15-year-old son is on that bed over in the corner.
It's temporary accommodation after the family were given a no-fault eviction by their landlord.
A set of bunk beds for my 9 and 10-year-old girls and a single bed, which is where I sleep.
They could afford the rent on an alternative property, but ended up homeless as they couldn't find a guarantor.
My dad, who was my guarantor, is no longer able to be my guarantor. He's now retired, and unless he has in excess of £58,000 in a savings account, he can't guarantor for us.
Kelly's property is mostly paid for by Eastbourne Borough Council. They're spending £4.5 million on temporary accommodation this year. Half of all the money they receive in council tax is spent on homelessness. The soaring costs are leading to cuts. The Heritage Centre at Beachy Head is to close. Arts spending is being cut. Swimming pools and toilets could also go.
None of these savings are easy for us to make, and I would prefer the government to be funding us in full for the cost of temporary accommodation. But as you've said, we've got to provide a balanced budget, and in order to do so without additional government support, we're going to need to look at making some really difficult decisions.
Ministers are said to be preparing a long-term strategy to tackle homelessness. Until then, however, councils will have to struggle on, as indeed will the homeless families they're supporting.
I wake up every day wondering if today's the day that I've got to pack up my family again and not know where we're going to next. Because I just don't know. We're just living day by day and waiting to see what happens, and it's mentally exhausting.
Kelly Mirza-Clay ending that report from Michael Buchanan in Eastbourne. Well, Claudia Sabasis is here. So, Claudia, last night the Borough Councillors voted through this big swathe of cuts. What's that going to affect in Eastbourne?
Well, they've already had to cut £3 million, and now they're saying they've got to save a further £2.7 million. So what are they going to cut? Well, you heard in the VT just there, the Heritage Centre at Beachy Head, that's going to close. The Town Gallery, they're going to have their budget slashed by £100,000. They're going to change the local operation of theatres and sell assets, although they haven't specified which assets. They're also going to reduce what they call seafront services. Now, that includes the toilets, and the toilets have actually been really expensive. I mean, they cost £300,000 last year to run, and there was a repair bill of £100,000 just because of vandalism. So there's going to be a consultation about that, whether to have a community toilet scheme. And that means restaurants, cafes, pubs, they get an incentive from the council to open up their toilets for the public. So there'll be a consultation on that.
Claudia, thank you. On to football now, and Brighton and Hove Albion are through to the 4th round of the Carabao Cup after a 3-2 win at home to Wolves last night. Carlos Baleba put the Seagulls in front in the 14th minute, firing into the bottom corner from outside the box and impressing with his celebrations. They doubled their lead 17 minutes later when Simon Adingra cut in from the left and powered a shot beyond Wolves keeper Jose Sarr. Turkish fullback Ferdi Kadioglu got Brighton's 3rd late on, scoring his first goal for the club. Kent's cricketers have been relegated to Division 2 of the County Championship after their defeat against Nottinghamshire this afternoon. But there is good news for Sussex. They're celebrating promotion to Division 1 with a game to spare after victory against Gloucestershire.
Every win, your last win is always your most enjoyable win, and and today is a fantastic occasion for the players and for all of us involved. But yeah, I was delighted, but I have to say, I'll sleep a lot better tonight because of the relief of getting over the line and knowing we're promoted.
The Women's Rugby World Cup comes to Brighton next year with the aim of encouraging a new generation of girls to take up the sport. The Amex Stadium will host 2 games, including an England match, and young players have told our sports reporter James Dunn the opportunity to watch star players in Sussex will be inspirational.
The next generation of internationals at a class-leading rugby programme in Hove. Specialist coaching at Cardinal Newman College helps Sussex students reach the top level.
Just the one-to-one training and the support we get, I think it definitely helps people. I mean, it's obviously successful because we've got so many great players playing for us.
To those already playing internationally at junior level, England at the Amex in the World Cup is big news.
When they announced, obviously, that England was hosting it, I was praying that the Amex was going to be one of the venues.
I mean, it's going to be amazing. We're going to be able to see the people we aspire to be like playing where we live.
Brighton hosted one of the most memorable moments of the Men's World Cup in 2015, when two-time champions South Africa were beaten by Japan. In 2022, they hosted the Lionesses in the Euros, a campaign England went on to win. And a report after the tournament said it brought host cities an £8 million economic boost. The council say they want to make the most of the financial and cultural impact of this tournament.
For so long, there have been various barriers to girls and women entering sport. So it's very important that we're demonstrating to girls here in Brighton and Hove on their doorstep that rugby is a game for them, that it's something that they can get involved in, that it's something that they can be inspired by. And so bringing some of these elite athletes here and really being able to showcase that is fantastic.
It's hoped what we see next year will inspire new players, but also showcase progress the women's game has already made. England's women are a hugely successful team, and a record crowd of nearly 60,000 packed out Twickenham as they won the Six Nations Grand Slam last year. But the Red Roses playing outside of London aims to show fans and players that this game, this tournament, is for everyone. James Dunn, BBC South East Today, Hove.
Now, after 60 years in the biz, with the Beatles and Cilla Black among his friends, it's safe to say that legendary entertainer Jimmy Tarbuck is never short of a good anecdote. Famously sports mad, he had trials for Brighton and Hove Albion in 1961 while working locally as a Butlins redcoat. But instead of footballing fame, he became a household name by 1964 as the compere of Sunday Night at the Palladium. He received an OBE for services to show business and charity in 1994, and 30 years on, head of shows in Kent and Sussex, he told Piers Hopkirk he still loves performing as much as ever.
A young newcomer from the pubs and clubs of Liverpool and the North.
From the city famed for the music that sparked the swinging 60s, it was Jimmy Tarbuck who provided the laughter track.
Their hostess came round, she said, "Would you like a drink?" I said, "Yes, please." "Give me a bunch of grapes and a do-it-yourself kit."
And when your primary school classmate was none other than John Lennon, maybe young Jimmy was destined for a life in the spotlight, even if it was John in those days who was telling jokes to the head.
Oh, he says, "Lennon, you've always had a lot to say for yourself. What do you know about arithmetic?" He said, "Lots, sir." He said, "Well, if you had 3 half-crowns in your left-hand pocket and 4 in your right-hand pocket, what would you have?" He said, "Tarbuck's trousers on." Well, the whole classroom roared, and he got belted. He got the cane for that.
In fact, the fires for a career in comedy had been lit long before, with a family trip to the Liverpool Empire.
I absolutely loved Laurel and Hardy, and they played dun da dun dun da dun da 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 dun, and I thought, that's here they are, and they walked on, and I couldn't believe that. A shiver went through me, and I run down the aisle and I went, "Hello, you're here," and the big one went, "Hello, kid," and did the tie, and I come back and said, "Hello to me, Dad," and the old man was near to tears, seeing the delight I had.
While Jimmy rose to fame, it might have been another career entirely. He had football trials for Brighton, but ended up in the Welsh League, toughening him up, he says, for a life on stage.
The captain and centre-half, and a great big fella called Orrig Williams. And you'd get kicked a lot in these matches because they were all pros, and I got floored one day. He said, "Get up, get your breath back in, you see." He said, "And go out on the wings and watch that fellow who hit you at the next corner for us." And then we got a corner ahead, oh, and this fellow was laid out. And Norrie just ran past and went, he won't be kicking you again, James.
So from the wings to centre stage, what a career it's been. More than 60 years and seldom out of the spotlight, driven on by just one thing.
I've loved every minute of it. Have I ever taken drugs? Every time I perform, I take drugs. And it's called laughter. And the laughter is my strength.
Looking back on his life in the limelight, Jimmy Tarbuck comes to the Horth in Crawley on Sunday and the Tunbridge Wells Assembly Hall on October the 9th. Piers Hopkirk, BBC South East Today.
How wonderful. Time now for a look at the weather, which is not looking wonderful towards the weekend, is it, Rachel?
I know, but we have had a good week. We can't ask for too much, can we? Yes, we have got some thunderstorms in the forecast, but back to today. Well, of course, it was feeling pretty summery, clear blue skies, and we had highs of 23 degrees. Now, over the next couple of days, eventually we're going to start to lose that sunshine. We've got some heavy rain and some chillier temperatures in the forecast. But for tomorrow, still, there should be some decent spells of sunshine. As we look towards the weekend, perhaps a bit of a damp start to Saturday, but mostly dry during the day before eventually over into Sunday. Some hefty thunderstorms are on the way. Now back to today, high pressure firmly in control of things. As you can see, no blue on the map. It was a dry, bright picture. Now as we go into tonight, we're holding on to the warmth. It's a mild night. Overnight temperatures staying in the mid-teens, only dropping there to around 13 or 14 degrees. So dragging in a bit more low cloud again on those nagging northeasterly breezes. So once again for tomorrow, a bit of a cloudy start to the day, but quite similar to today. By the afternoon, that cloud cover starts to break up. We see some decent spells of sunshine and temperatures once again of around 21 or 22 degrees. You saw some scattered showers behind me. It isn't completely dry, and that's just indicating the change as we look towards the weekend. We're losing that area of high pressure. We've got low pressure pushing up from the south. So as we go from Friday over into Saturday, we start dry, but eventually towards the early hours of Saturday morning, we start to see some outbreaks of rain. Again, it could be quite heavy at times. Again, it's going to be staying mild. Overnight temperatures only dropping to around 11 or 12 degrees. So for some of us, it's a wet start to Saturday, but actually by the afternoon, we should be seeing a dry, bright picture. Temperatures, again, reaching the low 20s, highs of 21 or 22 degrees. It's the last of those warmer days. As we go over into Sunday, this area of low pressure pushes up. We're expecting some heavy and thundery downpours for Saturday. Into the new week, temperatures much fresher. By the time we get to Monday or Tuesday, highs there of just 15. But for tomorrow, lots of sunshine. Make the most of it.
Indeed, make the most of it. We've been lulled into a false sense of security with the weather this week. Thank you very much, Rachel. That is it from us. Claire Starr is back at 10:30. Bye-bye for now.